Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the greatest games on the Blizzard. My name is Marcus Speller. With me is Jonathan Wilson. And with us is Maciej Iwański, presenter of TVP Sport in Poland and a member of the Ballon d'Or jury. Welcome aboard, sir.
Oh, this is all true. Thank you very much, sir.
Now, today we go back to October 1973, Wembley Stadium for a World Cup qualifier that ended England 1, Poland 1. Now, what's made you choose this game, Maciej?
Well, I believe, to be honest, that this is all triggered by Jonathan, who was the guest of the TVP Sports show on Kazimierz Górski, who's the coach that actually on the 2nd of March had his 100th birthday anniversary. Coach Górski passed away in 2006, but he still remains called, even not the coach of the century, but the coach of the millennium in Poland. And he's very well respected, loved by the former players, loved by fans, by journalists, practically loved by everybody here still. And 15 years after he passed away, many of his sentences are really alive in the Polish language also.
Mm-hmm. Well, so it's a strong start, Jonathan, and also he also ended Alf Ramsey's England career as well. So he did quite a lot in the time he was Poland manager.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Poland went on, had a great World Cup in '74, but yeah, this was the end for Alf Ramsey. It was England's first failure to qualify for a World Cup. There had been World Cups they hadn't been at before. This is the first time they tried to qualify and not made it. And I think really that night at Wembley, you know, it stands in English history. The ghosts of it are still felt, of this sort of horrendous night of England throwing everything at an opponent and not being able to score, not being able to get the result they need. England needs to win to go through to West Germany in '74, and being held to a draw, and this increasing sense of hopelessness and the realisation that it was yet another moment in England's descent from being the only country that played the game to being not that good at it.
And thank goodness England have not been embarrassed since then, from it, which is something that we can all agree. I mean, you're right, England, to give a bit of background, they needed to qualify for the World Cup. They, of course, were world champions in '66. Some say they had a better side in '70, where they were disappointed to go out in the quarter-final. So they were a heavyweight in world football, you know, certainly England would argue. But Poland, where did they sit? Because I'm aware they won the gold medal at the 1972 Olympics for football, so clearly this was a talented side that obviously went on to great things in '74. But in this game, it seemed like it was David versus Goliath.
No, certainly. We all know that. And that's why we always, for the last almost 50 years, we have treated this game as a kind of a miracle. And you have pointed out 1972. It is very right, because Kazimierz Górski started to work as the national team coach, and it was in the '71. He started from the 1st of January 1970, but it was half a year since he had his first game in Switzerland, when we had a very good start, 4-2 win. And then in the book published 2 years before Coach Kazimierz Górski died, he revealed that what he really liked is that basically all of the best Polish players were playing in the Polish league. If we would have that now, we would certainly be playing the Champions League, some of our clubs, every season, which obviously does not happen at all. And our club football is well, let's just skip it for an opportunity. But in the '72, we have qualified firstly for the Munich Olympic Games. We have won it, beating on the way Soviet Union. It was on the day of these tragical events in Munich 1972. So this game was very close to even not being played, but we have managed to win this game despite losing 1-0 to Soviet Union at the halftime. Mm-hmm. Then we have beaten Hungary, and you know what Hungary was at that time. Still, 1972, we have beaten them in the final, and it started a great process. So Kazimierz Górski had a very good background, but of course, qualifiers for the World Cup is a very different start, and the first match we have lost in Cardiff 2-0 down. And then the game, Jonathan says in Katowice, but technically it was Chorzow, the Silesian Stadium, 1973 on the 6th of June. that was the reason that the Wembley game is so extremely, as I even say, it's a legendary game in Polish football, because we have beaten England 2-0, and it has never happened again, unfortunately, until these days. So we were able to beat England 2-0, and a couple of things have happened at that time. Kazimierz Górski was obviously a great coach in terms of coaching from the psychological point of view. He was very calm, very relaxed. He was talking simple things. He also had full trust of the players. He was previously working as the U21, U23 national coach, so he knew all the background of all the also younger generation coming into the team. And he was the only one that actually did believe that we stand the chance against England. So a week before the Wembley game, because we have beaten Wales in the second game in Poland 3-0, and Andrzej Strela, one of the assistants of Kazimierz Górski, who, believe it or not, he's 81 and he's the pundit with us on TVP Sports, and I do commentate games with him. Extreme memory, incredible person. He was at Wembley a week before, so we have managed to. First of all, he was there when we have beaten Wales 3-0. And you were playing also a game, and everybody cheered at Wembley. And he told that on telly. It's like, I was amazed. Like, everybody stand up and started to sing "God Save the Queen," because the result, Poland beating Wales, happened that it made the Wembley game important. Because if Wales would have been better, then they would go to the World Cup in 1974, and wow, that would be a result also. So a week before, you have beaten Austria 7-0. And we thought that we are like on the similar level with Austria. But Kazimierz Górski took our national team to play away game in the Netherlands against Holland. And we managed the 1-1 draw. And that was the point for the team when they thought, if we are going to play away against Holland, and we've managed to get a draw, and the draw is perfectly good for us at Wembley, why do we all think that we don't have a chance? We do. So it helped the team to get a little bit of the confidence. But of course, we know what happened. We know what Brian Clough have said about Jan Tomaszewski. We know what the papers have made with the Polish team before the game. And actually, these players, they all knew that. And Kazimierz Górski told in one of his interviews that during the warm-up before the game, the players came back. He usually went with the team out to the pitch to see, what kind of boots do they need to wear, etc., etc. But this time he did not. But he said that the players came back very angry, and he asked them, what's going on? And they said, Coach, do you know, sir, what they are shouting at us? They are shouting that we are animals. So he said, and at that point, I knew that I do not have to motivate my team at all. So it was, of course, David versus Goliath. Of course, England had absolutely everything on their side. But we also did have a counter-attacking style, which John knows a lot about, and the process that happened at that time in English football and also in Europe and Eastern Europe. And we had a lot of talented players that, for them, it was like, the match of their life. It triggered everything. They couldn't leave Poland because there were offers, for example, for Włodzimierz Lubański from Real Madrid. Grzegorz Lato later was the top scorer of the World Cup. And Andrzej Sharma. Yeah, Andrzej Sharma was the runner-up. He scored 5, and he replaced Jan Tomaszewski, who was the hero at Wembley, scoring the only goal for Poland. So basically, we did have a lot of great players, but it was just a moment. Of course, England could have easily win that game 4 or 5-0. That could have happened.
Yeah, it could be so different, Jonathan.
Well, I mean, I think that's the crucial point, that you can, as an England fan or somebody English, you can watch the highlights of the game at Wembley, and you can think, well, this was a freak. England were much better. England should have won. Poland defended heroically, but with a lot of good fortune. Tomaszewski had one of those nights, and England somehow, luck was against them. But actually, if you look at the game in Chorzow, which was 6 months earlier, Poland totally outplayed England that night. England were terrible, and that game really showed the difference between the sides. That Poland were the better team, and so England lost that game 2-0. The first goal was after 7 minutes, quite early. But England had gone out to defend. England clearly, they knew that if they drew that game, they'd only need to draw. Other results going as you'd expect, they'd only need to draw at Wembley. So they went out to draw it. 7 minutes, they go behind a near post free kick, which sort of takes a couple of deflections and flies in. And they didn't change. They just kept playing that same way. And then I don't know, quite 10 minutes from the end, something like that. Bobby Moore gets caught in possession, and Poland get a second. And that's the end of Bobby Moore. He plays 3 more friendlies for England, but he doesn't play in any other competitive games. So that game finishes Bobby Moore. And then Alan Ball is sent off late on, and in those days, a sending off, particularly at national level, was a disgrace. It just didn't happen. So that was a really embarrassing day for England, and this was a chance to put it right. And to be fair to England, they pretty much did everything they could have done to win the game, and they didn't do it. But the damage had been done in that first game.
Where were England though at the moment?
Could we stop for a second? Because speaking about the second goal at that night in Chorzow for Poland, I'm not sure if you know, but what Kazimierz Górski also did with his team is that one of his assistants, the other one, Jacek Moch, still with us, over 80, he was the chief of the Bank of Information. And that was something new, because previously nobody cared about the rivals. You thought only about you and your plan for the game, etc., etc. And Jacek Moch did have his network of people watching the games and sending out the conclusions. And one of the conclusions, this is what Włodzimierz Lubański have said, was that Bobby Moore likes to get the ball to his right feet and play the safe ball to the goalkeeper. He just basically waits. So this was no accidental thing. Lubański was just waiting for the moment to get the ball from Bobby Moore and then just go and score. And that's what happened. And this was also the point that basically everybody understood how it is important to know what your rival is doing on what basically is his idea of playing.
And I think that's a really interesting contrast to England. I think England still had Ramsey began to change it, but I think there was still an arrogance there. There wasn't great scouting of the opposition. Obviously, it was much harder to do in those days than it would be today. You couldn't just get 1,000 hours of tapes. You'd have to actually go and watch somewhere. You'd have to go and find a video somehow. So it was hard, but I still think England lagged behind other teams in doing that. And I think what you see repeatedly, not just at national football, but with club football in the early 70s, is that English teams keep getting caught out by teams who play on the break. It's like they can't quite compute that you can win a game by sitting deep and then striking. As if the only legitimate way to play is to take the game to the opposition. So, Matt Busby obviously is retired by the time this game happens, but his autobiography comes out, I think when it comes out for Christmas 73, so it must be pretty much coming out around the time of this game. There's an extraordinary chapter in there where he talks about his theory of football. And one of the things he says is, I'm really glad I never went down the route of the Italians and just defended. So there's still in British football this sense that defending and playing on the counter is somehow not quite right. And again, you have around the time of this game, Liverpool play Red Star in the European Cup. And they lose 2-1 in Belgrade, they lose 2-1 at Anfield, and both games get picked off on the break. And, not that we had possession stats in those days, but if we had them, it would have been Liverpool 2/3 of the ball. And so to a British or an English mentality, they've dominated, they deserve to win. But they keep losing. They keep getting picked off by cleverer sides. And then, of course, when Bob Paisley replaces Shankly the following summer, one of the things Paisley does is to say, look, we've learned, we're not going to do that. And the programme notes for their first European game in the Cup Winners' Cup in 74-5, Paisley puts in his programme notes, begging the Kop, be patient. We cannot attack in the way we've always previously attacked. We have to accept that sometime we won't have a ball. It's not going to be gung-ho. And you have your part to play, you as fans, by not getting on our backs if we're not attacking. And so this game at Wembley, yes, England have 30 shots, Poland have 2. On a normal day, England would have won. But at the same time, this pattern of being picked off, being caught out on the counter-attack, was something that kept on happening to English teams in this period.
All right, chaps, let's have a quick break and then we'll talk about the game itself. Back in a moment, everybody. Welcome back to the Greatest Games on Blizzard. Maciej, something that you mentioned earlier was that the England fans were shouting at the Polish players. They were calling them animals. And the goalkeeper Tomaszewski said this in an interview years later. And he also said in the same breath, we did play quite violently against England at home. Now, I've not seen any footage of the game, but was that the case? Could this Polish side, could they be quite stern and quite tough?
Well, first of all, they had a little bit of confidence after the draw against Holland away a week before the Wembley match. That's the first thing. The other one, of course, they were extremely motivated. Kazimierz Górski in 1999 called this game the most important match ever in the history of the Polish football. In that moment, 90 years now, they are more than 100 years of the Polish football. Why is that? Because after Wembley, after we qualified for the World Cup with only 16 teams, we were also noticed by the world. Come on, it was knocking out England out of the World Cup. So the English newspapers have wrote the end of the world. So Tomaszewski, after I spoke to him recently, and he basically, what is good, he's saying the same stuff for the years since Wembley.
Sure,
So
we interviewed him together, didn't we? Which would have been, 2004? 2005
yes,
maybe?
We did. Yes,
and
yes,
I think we should say that his reputation in Poland now is. How would you describe it? You go first and see if I agree with you.
Well, Jan he's like against everybody all the time. If you want to have if you want to have a different opinion, you have somebody talking about football and you have a different opinion. You call Jan, and he said, no, it's not like this. It's a completely opposite. But
he's what in England journalists would euphemistically call good value.
Yeah,
exactly.
That you're not going to have to wait long to get some good stuff out of him.
He's a man at the end of the bar with an opinion on everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, speaking about the bar, after Wembley game, the Polish team went to a bar, and Leszek Ćmikiewicz, one of the players, and also Jan Tomaszewski have confirmed that they went there. Of course, they were drinking heavily until morning and celebrating. And the English disc jockey have asked, "Why are you so happy? What's going on? Who are you?" So they told him, "We are the team that knocked you out of the World Cup." So, as Ćmikiewicz has said, the disc jockey went somewhere for a few minutes and got back with the record, with the vinyl record of the England 1966. Some songs by fans, players, etc., etc. And he was keep on putting that on for the whole night. But Ćmikiewicz has said, we really did not care. We were singing with them. So we were so extremely happy. But Tomaszewski have said that because of the early thing that happened during that game, he got kicked in the hand. You remember, Jonathan? Jan told us that.
Alan Clark just kind of catches his hand. It's a complete accident. There's I think it's a free kick, isn't it? Martin Peters plays it across. It's headed back across goal, and Alan Clark goes in, and Tomaszewski goes for it, and Clark obviously kicks his hand. And actually, what's really interesting is the referee refuses for ages to let him have treatment. The referee thinks he's putting it on, but clearly, he did get kicked and he was clearly in quite a lot of pain.
Yeah, and Mr. Leroux also the influence of Wembley game. In 2000, I don't know, 2001 or 2, I'm at Polonia Warsaw Stadium, some European game, some early stage of qualifiers, and Michel Leroux is the FIFA representative at that game, and UEFA representative at that game, and the speaker says, "This Mr. Leroux who was the referee at Wembley," and everybody starts clapping. Yeah, so, yeah. But basically, he got kicked in the hand, and Górski have wrote in his book that he asked for a substitution at that time. You remember, John? Jan did not tell us that. He told that he felt a lot of pain, but it also, in some point, it made him concentrate 100%.
Yeah, they gave him a sort of adrenaline rush, and suddenly he was fearless and felt he couldn't be beaten. Yeah,
yeah, he got so mad that he suddenly, if that wouldn't happen, maybe he would not be that good in goal. But basically, Górski have wrote that he asked for a substitution, and Górski said, "No, you're gonna survive this. You're staying on the pitch." And if you take a look at that game, and I watched this game last week, he gets off the glove, he throws the ball, and he shouts something and waves to the bench. So I think that basically Kazimierz Górski have got it right, that he wanted to get off at that point. But also, when they were preparing to the England game, they thought that Tomaszewski is going to get out of the goal many times because of the crosses, that were going to the penalty area. So they have ordered, and it happened 3 times, that the defenders cleared off the line. And it was intentional. They never did that before. Never in 20 months of Kazimierz Górski's work, they have practiced this kind of behavior. But before Wembley, it was absolutely automatical behavior that when Tomaszewski gets out, 2 or 3 defenders are going into the goal. So that was one of the things that Kazimierz Górski pointed and ordered them to do. And without it, it would be, 2 or 3 easy goals for England, surely, out of the rebounds.
Well, I mean, England had 26 corners in the game, Jonathan, and Tomaszewski's starting position for some of those corners is quite intriguing, especially late on in the game. So it's just as well. I mean, I love that thought of the manager saying, right, he's going to do it. Make sure that there's a couple of you back on the line.
But I mean, England went in with they had Martin Chivers as the centre forward, so they had a big target man centre forward, and I don't think that was how, or maybe it was. I mean, I think it exaggerated the tendency in Ramsey's football anyway to play to a big target man. There's a lot of those long floated diagonals, which sometimes can be a sign of a team sort of running out of ideas, and you sort of think just punt it forward and hope something happens. But I suspect here it was a deliberate policy because England thought Tomaszewski he's not comfortable, he's not behaving normally, and we will, and they're right, they did create chances, and for whatever reason they didn't go in, and it may well have been planned for defenders to cover behind the keeper, but that's not there's a reason why that's not a standard way of playing, right? It's a big risk.
And it paid off. I mean, we should say a few. Oh, sorry.
Come on, guys, come on. You say that England had 17 shots.
30 shots.
Well, 36 if we're being precise.
35, but 17 went on. Yeah, 17 were 16 were saved, and the one came in. But and you say that Poland had 5 shots and 2 were and one of the goal of the two were onside. But do you know, or do you remember, or have you seen it, that Grzegorz Lato was actually eye on eye with Peter Shilton, and Peter Shilton did save this situation because Lato, I don't know what happened to his mind at that point, because he could easily kill that game and score the second goal for Poland. That's the first thing. And the other one, that Lato was going eye on eye, the kind of run that gave him gave us the third place in the world later in 1974 against Brazil, and he was caught by McFarland, and McFarland got only a yellow card for this.
Well, that was the law in those days.
Yeah, exactly, and but he was clapped anyway, years later. But basically, the funny thing is that the commentator for the time, a long time passed away, Jan Tomaszewski, also the legendary commentator, because with all these successes, he has to be a legendary commentator in Poland. He said, I really cannot. Where is the English gentleman? Where is it? How can it be like this? Where is the fair play? Whoa, that was really something. So we also could score at least 3 that night, of course. But when we did score, it was, Kazimierz Górski also said one thing, which was changing the mentality or building the mentality of these guys. Every of the players that ever played for Kazimierz Górski are grateful, and they used to say that he was the one that actually made their careers possible, even if they were not such a great careers because they couldn't live for Real Madrid or AC Milan or whatever. You could leave Poland only when you were 28 and you had permission from the Communist Party. That was the only thing. Also, Górski later went to coach in Greece. He won a 5-time championship in Greece, and for every year of his contract, he has the permission from the actual Polish government or the Communist Party at the time. But basically, they really had the confidence. They had the plan for that game. Of course, England were far much better, and we all know that. But they were about to get simple things, and this was simple football. But also, this was football based on pace on the wings. And if you take a look at the goals scored by Poland, we took the ball away. I don't know which one of the players actually have lost this ball.
Norman Hunter.
You think Hunter was the one that it could be.
He got caught because he was.
It's Hunter who misses the challenge on halfway because he basically could kick the ball in the touch. He tries to kind of stop it and bring it back.
Well, he was brought in because we preferred to Bobby Moore.
Yeah. Well, because he'd gone to the previous 2 World Cups and not played a game because Bobby Moore was obviously sacrosanct at the time.
But you know that we were very afraid, that Polish team and the coaches were very afraid of Kegin Keegan, who were not used at that game. So he was an unused sub that evening by Sir Alf Ramsey. But anyway, if you take a look at that goal, that was a pure counter-attack, fast counter-attack, and the goal scored. And this is exactly what we did. And Kazimierz Górski have taught his players, you need to, when you think about the game, you need to start with 1-0. This is like the Bible, the first page of the Bible. You need to firstly read this when you want to read it all, and you need to remember that firstly we need to have 1-0 result for us, and that's what they did practically in every game. Later in 1970, it was so different. you couldn't even imagine something like that happening now, but not in terms of football. It can happen that we beat England, yeah, but or we get a draw at Wembley, for example. But it will never happen again because this was the team from the communist country, the closed country. It was the 70s. So much talented players that actually never had the ability also to earn, because just going back for a second in 1974. So Poland were third in the world, and they got $1,800,000 from FIFA for this achievement. Well, it would be, I think, like a $10 million at least now, yeah, comparing to the modern times. And please guess how many did the team get out of this 1,800,000?
I'd be surprised if they got anything.
They did, but
oh, okay. Oh, they did. Oh well,
$50,000.
Right.
That was all they got.
But between them for the whole squad.
Yeah. So, and if you take a look also at their careers, they were huge players, but they would be legends if they would be just able to go away to the big clubs. They were never able. Dana did, yeah. He went to Manchester City, but we know that he did not actually suit into English football, so that's why it didn't work that much. Also, I talked to one of the guys from Manchester City who actually made this deal possible. And one of the problems was, of course, that Kazimierz Dejna was not speaking English fluently, so he did not actually accommodate and integrate with the team well. But there was a lot of talent. On that night, there was a bit of luck, at least, a big chunk of luck on Polish side. But later, in the 1974, they proved that this was a team. They went out to be third in the world.
Well, I think that's the thing that surprises me, Maciej. When I look at Poland's performance at the 1970 World Cup, as you say, Lato finishes top scorer. His name escapes me, but the young player of the tournament is in the Polish side.
Włodzimierz Żmura, he was just 18 years old. He didn't.
Yeah.
And Wembley, he was with the junior team. They played the youth team. They played day before, and they managed to get a draw. Yeah. And they were the guests at Wembley also as the VIPs, and they were sitting just down there and watching the game. And I talked to him, asked him, "Did you ever think that you're going to play at the World Cup?" He said, "No, never. Come on." And he played in 4 of the World Cups, so he's
So he gets the best young player at the tournament. I mean, that's incredible, as you say. He's in the junior side for qualifying. I mean, in that World Cup, they beat Argentina, Italy, Sweden, Yugoslavia, and Brazil. So I suppose, and as I said, they won the sort of Olympics in '72, for what that's worth. But I think that is worth something. Of course, it's a gold medal. So I'm just so surprised that in this game, does that show maybe the psyche of the Polish people at the time? I know England had big players, Shilton and, as you say, Keegan on the bench, and Emlyn Hughes and one or two others, but looking at that performance in '74, having won the gold in '72 and having some of these players, I'm just quite surprised that it was such a David and Goliath dynamic.
It was because basically, remember what the John have said, different times. So if it would be televised widely, everybody would recognize this team earlier. But even after beating England at home, this was something big. And
they'd already beaten England, as you said.
This is what Kazimierz Górski also have said, that after that game, they got congratulated from the whole over the world for beating England. And they were surprised, like, whoa, so like suddenly the Polish Football Association gets the letters or the telegrams from all around the world congratulating on beating England. So, but still, when they were going to Wembley, they thought that, we are that and England is that. And this is obvious. So they had to prove themselves on that night. And what they did actually triggered the whole process. And if we are talking about Wembley, I'm not sure if you remember this, but it was very different type of the World Cup in 1974. So the last game of the second round against Germany, West Germany, we had to win, and they were good with the draw to go to the final. And this was the game that would surely not be able to be on in recent times, because the water was everywhere. And we call it a match on water, actually. And it is widely recognized in Poland, and everybody keeps on saying that if that game would be played on a normal pitch, we would be in the final and maybe even win it. And, there was a communist time, we were the communist country, etc., etc. You know about it all. But I asked a couple of these Wembley heroes what would have happened if they would go to the final, because Tomaszewski saved the penalty against the West Germany on the day in Frankfurt. but obviously we could not use the pace because of the water. So we were unable to play the attacking style we had at that World Cup. And they all told me, if we would have won the World Cup, it would be different, because we would be allowed to go to the world. Because at that time, the Communist Party would say, yes, so we are the world champions, so we now want to go and expand the Poland to the world. So probably we would see these guys in clubs like Barcelona, Real Madrid, I don't know, Liverpool, etc., etc. So this would be very different. If you talk to the people of that generation, they are still alive. Wembley and then that Frankfurt game are absolutely the key points. The funny thing is that the expectations were that high that in 1976, when we lost the final at the Olympics, because we did not qualify for Euro 76, we have beaten Holland 4-1 at home and then lost 3-0 away. And there's a famous picture of Johan Cruyff, you will find it easily on the internet, on his knees in front of Kazimierz Dejna. And some people say that was the best game ever played by Poland, 4-1 against Holland, that Holland. And basically, they lost the final in 1976, and coach Kazimierz Górski had to go. So not even 3 years after Wembley, not even 2 years after the World Cup. Still, people were so disappointed that then 1978, some people say that we had a better team in 1978 and 74, but there was Zbigniew Bonik was in also. And we didn't manage to get a success there. And in 82, we repeated that third place in the world, and that was it. And basically, in 1986, you remember what happened with Lineker scoring 3 goals against Poland. And we disappeared from the World Cups for 16 years.
But I mean, so Marcus, to come back to the initial question about why was it such a David Goliath, and not just in the build-up, but in the actual game. It looks like a giant killing. I think it's easy to overlook the fact, because we know what went before, we know what came after. We know that before this, England were fading. They'd been well beaten by West Germany in the quarter-final of the European Championship in 72. They'd lost 3-1 at Wembley. And Wembley actually is another thing that I think it's easy to overlook what a factor that was in those days. That England didn't lose at Wembley. They'd lost to Hungary, they'd lost to West Germany. I think those were the only defeats to non-British sides at Wembley. I think that was still true in 73. So going to Wembley was a difficult thing. And we know that England failed to qualify not just for this World Cup, but for the 78 World Cup as well. So it's easy to think that sort of once 1970 was over, once Ramsey's great World Cup winning side has faded, that what was left was rubble. But actually, I think this is quite a good side. Yeah. And Mick Shannon, I mean, of course, Mick Shannon would say this. He's sort of duty bound to say this, and he's a very ebullient, confident character anyway. But he says that for him the tragedy was that Ramsey was sort of hounded out after this, and he says, we look at how well we played. We were a great team, and his argument about that game is we absolutely hammered the team that had gone and finished third at the World Cup. We just couldn't score a second goal, and so, I mean, as ever, the truth is somewhere in between the two. But it's not a question of England failing to beat a minnow or England somehow not turning up at night. England played really, really well in this game. And they just, for whatever reason, they can't score. Well, I mean, for Tomaszewski, they can't score. I mean, Tomaszewski, as unorthodox as a lot of his goalkeeping was, the first half, he makes 2 outstanding saves. A save down to his right from Colin Bell, and then the Chivers header where he goes back and flicks it over the bar. They're outstanding saves. So, yeah, the Clough comment about him being a clown, there's a truth to it, and weirdly, it's almost become more true since he retired from playing. And he was unorthodox, but he made at least 2 absolutely outstanding orthodox saves as well.
Yeah, he was quite sort of almost like a South American goalkeeper. When you think of the great sort of Ray Higuita, at least there was a touch of that about to his style.
Well, basically, this is the game that, of course, 1974 was also the hero time for Tomaszewski. He saved 2 penalties on the way to the 3rd place in the world, which actually I was surprised to recognize that we got the silver medals for that, because there was a gold medal for the winners, gold-plated medals for the second team. We had the silver, and the 4th team got the bronze medals, which was Brazil. That's why we cannot say we are the bronze medalists twice. We need to say that we were 3rd in the world twice. But Tomaszewski, look, in Poland, he is regarded only through Wembley, and this was also an incredible night for a man like him, because he had to play his first game in the national team against in the qualifiers for Euro 72 and he was the one to blame because he made 2 errors in the game against West Germany in Warsaw, and you can only imagine what did it mean to play West Germany at that time. And he wasn't about to the one to be blamed, but that's what people thought, and he could easily end his career at that time. Legia Warsaw didn't want him because of these errors, and he went to the other club. He rebuilt his career. He rebuilt his also national team career because Kazimierz Górski have given him another chance. So this is not a typical story of just I was a player, I played national team, I had a success, bing bang, thank you, goodbye. There was the guy that had to rebuild his career and his life from the ashes. And he did that on Wembley night, and he keeps on saying that it wasn't him. He just was lucky, and he had a great defenders next to him. He's in that category is a little bit humble, saying now about that game, and he gives everything to the team and to the coach basically. But yeah, I looked at him, and it was. I think what John said is the most true thing to say. It was just one of these nights. You don't know what it is, but it's just this X factor. That you are there, you are able to save or to score. It just sometimes happens. You don't actually even know why.
And then, so I mean, we should actually talk more specifically about what happens in the game. So it's 0-0 at half time. Tomaszewski's made these 2 great saves. Norman Hunter's hit the post from 6 yards. I mean, it's Roy McFarlane knocks a free kick back across goal, and Hunter's sort of coming in, and there's a scramble of plays, and it gets turned onto the post. And then Poland take the lead. After 57 minutes, we've talked about that. Lato gets past Hunter down the left, and then it's a really bad mistake from Shilton, and Tomaszewski's shot sort of he goes under his dive, and Shilton said he changed his technique completely because of that, and then within a couple of minutes, England have a goal ruled out, which I have to say, it's not really clear what's been ruled out for. It must be for a push by Martin Peters, but it's not a clear push.
In today's money, you can see he's a bit all over the defender. I wasn't that surprised.
I mean, and to be fair, the whistle goes before the ball's put in the net, and Shannon scores it. But
that was a very good refereeing, very good.
Round of applause.
And then 63rd minute, so 6 minutes after Poland have taken the lead. So another couple of minutes after this ruled out goal, Peters goes. Darts past it's Musio, isn't it? Who just nudges him, and he goes down. I think it's quite a cheap penalty.
That's never a penalty for me.
Well,
not in 1973.
Yeah, it's basically so they cancel out. I think the goal that was ruled out was a cheap foul. I think the penalty was a cheap foul. So if one's a foul, yes, the other's a foul. But I don't think either's a foul. And there's then that great shot of Shilton. So there's a shot from behind Shilton's goal, and Shilton down on his knees, turning away, his head in his hands, as Alan Clark scores the penalty at the other end. And that's just a fantastic photograph. Because I think especially fantastic because of the nature of Wembley, the fact the pitch is so far from the stands that you've got this sense of darkness and all this action at the other end, and in the foreground the keeper just not being able to look. And then it's just England chance after chance after chance after chance, ball in the box, ball in the box, ball in the box. Eventually Kevin Hector's come off the bench, has an effort cleared off the line, and they just cannot get the winner.
Well, this substitution of Kevin Hector, I told you, Poland were sure that it will be Kevin Keegan, and they were afraid of Kevin Keegan. So analyzing that game, we also thought that was the biggest mistake that Alf Ramsey did, because the players were really afraid of the abilities that Kevin Keegan could do. But that was his decision in favor of Poland. Also, Kazimierz Górski at that time, because he later said, anytime you asked about Wembley, I don't want to go through that again, ever. So that was also a hell for him in terms of being the coach of that team. But during the halftime, because let's go back for a second until that moment, what Tomaszewski have said. So there's a halftime. They're going to the restroom, all of the players. They're shouting. There's a chaos. And Górski stands, waits 4 minutes, and after precisely 4 minutes, he says, "Gentlemen, please come down." And Tomaszewski said, and we looked at him like he was just fall down from the space. So like we are in the middle of the hell, and the coach says, "Just please sit down." Gentlemen, what can I say? And we have a sentence in Polish. I will try to translate it. The devil is not as scary as they paint him. And that was it. And he didn't say even a single word more. And he got out. So the team gets out for the second half. And 5 minutes before the final whistle, so Górski gets on his knees and walks towards the restroom. So the players have noticed that. They saw that he's going away. And asked about it, he said, well, I just wanted to show the referee that we are about to end that game. So,
crafty. Well, and you compare that to the halftime words of Brian Clough, who was punditing on the game, said, "Keep calm, put the kettle on, mother. Don't worry, the goals are going to come." And in a sense, he was right because it was 2 goals, of course. But yes, if I may, I'd like to leave the last words to Tomaszewski. When he was interviewed years later, and I'm sure you know all the sound bites, Maciej, and he said, "I have never watched the game again." Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
He did not. He did not.
Yeah, really? Okay. Well, then he said, "But if you have a game like this, you always remember it in your heart. I can wake up in the middle of the night and remember every minute." And he deserved it. And he wrote himself and the whole team, of course, into the history books. Amazing, Maciej. It's been a pleasure talking to you about this game.
My pleasure.
For more stories like that, do check out theblizzard.co.uk. But from Maciej, Jonathan and myself, cheerio for now. We'll be back next week with another great game from football. Thanks very much.